many of you went to summer camp, church camp specifically? Ever? Ever?
Yes.
How many of you had altar calls at church camp? Wow, you didn't go to my church camp. There would have been a... I love church camp. In fact, I love church camp so much that we, for a while, were part of a tradition that had family camp, so that we could go to church camp as a family. I mean, how cool is it, right? You get to hang out with people. I only did tent camping once. I did, to me, the coolest thing about going to church camp is being with all the same people all week long. You run from the rain or you die in the heat together. And there's something that happens. You just kind of get this cool, I hate to say pod mentality, but it's a little bit like that, right? Where you bond together. And if it's a high school camp or a junior high camp or a kids camp, you're all in the same place together, right? You're all walking the same path. And at the end, usually, there's the big high. Any of you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. The big high. That's the high where you say, somebody stands up in front of you and says, "Who wants to meet Jesus?" And by the end of the week, y'all stink and you're all sweaty. And, you know, if you're 9-year-olds, you haven't changed clothes all week. And you get there and they're all, "Yes, I want to meet Jesus." And everybody runs to the altar. And then the next day you load the buses and go home. Hopefully, with Sunday school teachers that'll follow up and that kind of thing, right? But the reality is, what? You're coming from the mountain. So for most of us, and I'm specifically talking about me, we go chasing more spiritual highs. You know it's true. Because how many of you have rededicated your life? Mm-hmm. How many of you have rededicated your life more than once? How many of you rededicated your life more than once in junior high? And, you know, seriously, you're chasing that high. You're chasing that, I just want to feel that passion to meet Jesus. And it's really hard because that high just doesn't last, right? So what do? We go to revivals, depending on your tradition. Everybody loves a good tent meeting, lots of music, lots of singing, lots of clapping and stomping, and we're all there to meet Jesus. And then maybe we go to, okay, so the modern day tent meeting is what? More than church. Come on, we even call it the rock and roll worship show, right? We all gather into Key Arena or Moda Center with Chris Tomlin or David Crowder, and we praise Jesus and we get our spiritual high back. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But it's something we just chase after. We long for that. And it's like this, it's kindling. But for most of us, it's kindling that kind of just never quite catches the logs, right? And we go back to school, or we go back to the office, or we go back to our daily lives, and we think, maybe if I played the CD, I'd feel that again. And we just want that mountaintop experience again. We want to be back face to face with Jesus. And while there's nothing wrong with it, it's kind of like adrenaline high. Anybody in here an adrenaline junkie? Oh yeah, loud and proud. She's got that hand up. I'm too big of a chicken to be an adrenaline junkie. I have to find it someplace else. But you can't live on pure adrenaline. What happens if you live on pure adrenaline?
Adrenal crash.
Adrenal fatigue, yes. Bam! Shorten your lifespan, just like that. And I think it's a little bit like that with our spiritual life. If we're always seeking to just live on that spiritual high, we get a little spiritual fatigue, right? We definitely at least get a crash. But this is the human condition. It wasn't just us. I mean, we like to say it's part of our modern society, but it's not. The disciples did it too. And when I realized that the disciples also chased spiritual highs, I thought, okay, so what is that about them? Let me read to you from Luke 9, 28 through 36. And this is from the source, so it's probably not exactly like any of your translations, but I like the language of it. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him up to the hill country to pray. While he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes turned as bright as a flash of lightning. Suddenly, 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared and talked with Jesus. They discussed his death, which was about to happen at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions became overcome with sleep. But when they were wide awake again, they saw his splendor, and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, it's good that we're here. How about we put up 3 shelters? One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what he was saying. And while he was speaking, a cloud appeared and completely cast its shadow over them, and they were scared, as they went into it. A voice came out of the cloud and said, "This is my son. I have chosen him. Listen to him." When the voice stopped, they realized that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and didn't tell anyone at the time what they had seen. You talk about your mountaintop. I mean, they literally were on the mountain. But they saw Elijah. They saw Moses. They saw Jesus' face transformed. His garments were flashing lights. So I get it. Peter just wanted to hang out with the holy guys just a little bit longer. Right? That makes sense to us. It makes sense to me. Jesus, let's camp for like 3 days and just hang out, and you can tell us about these guys and we can talk about what they told you. I mean, besides the fact that Moses and Elijah were dead. So, I mean, think about all the questions you would have. Think about all those things that would stir up in you and you'd say, wow, I wonder what heaven's like. I wonder if they tell us what heaven's like. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, let's hang out. Right? Well, the text says he didn't know what he was saying. But the text doesn't tell us what he didn't know. So I was doing a little bit more research because I'm not really, the first time I read this, I'm like, well, he didn't know what he was saying. Well, I don't really know what he was saying either. So what was wrong with that? I mean, we all do it. We all feel that way. And why did God feel the need to go, this is my son? I mean, why did God so dramatically intervene in that moment? What was Peter missing? Because, Peter loved to miss the point. And it was obviously an important point because you don't get thunder and a voice from heaven unless it's important. I mean, I don't get thunder and voices from heaven, so I'm assuming that was a big deal. And we never hear, did Peter actually get it after that? Did he ever get what happened there? I never saw that. Why doesn't the text explain that to us? After doing a whole lot of reading over and over, for me, the best way when I don't understand it is just to keep reading it over and over and over again. There's got to be a clue. But I realized that there's no clue buried in just this passage. So I had to go bigger. So what do you do with the Gospels? The Gospel writers sometimes told stories in different order depending on their own agenda. Now, agenda, I say that in a good way. That each of the gospel writers wanted to make a certain point. So the three synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they had something specific to say. Each one of them had a specific purpose for their writing. So sometimes stories got put in different order. But this is one of those stories that was basically the same in all three synoptic gospels. That's a big clue to me. That means that it was the way it happened, the order that it happened, the order they tell it, and the way they tell it is a big deal. So, I have to ask the question, why did the gospel writer or writers put the story in the text in the first place? And second of all, why did they put it in this order? So, let's go back and look a bit at the surrounding texts. So, every single synoptic writer basically put the text in the same order as Luke. There's a couple other things that are added, but for the most part, this is the way it goes. Jesus sends the 12 out, gives them their assignments. Then, in Luke, Herod gets curious about Jesus and wants to know how he relates to John the Baptist. Herod had a little thing for John the Baptist, but that's not part of this story. Then there was the miracle feeding of the 5,000 plus people. So we have assignment, miracle. Then Jesus asks Peter, who do you say I am? Remember that? Mm-hmm. Who do the people say I am? Who do you say I am? And then Jesus foretells his own death. And then this story happens. He goes up on the mountain, he meets with Elijah and Moses, they talk about his impending death, and Peter misses the point. Then when they go back down the mountain, Jesus heals the boy possessed by a demon, and then Jesus foretells his death again. So that order must mean something. So there's a tension here. Peter, James, and John went up to the mountain with Jesus. They were called up after all this other, the assignments, the miracle, after the conversation about who Jesus is, they went up and they experienced something that you and I will not experience in this lifetime. An incredible witness experience. They went up. Not only did they watch the face of Jesus transform, but they saw it transform as he talked with Moses and Elijah. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. But they still missed the point. That's the tension there for me. How do you see Jesus face to face and still get it so wrong? So, I'm going to rehash that a little bit with what happened there. They're called to a specific mission. They're given ringside seats to the kingdom at work. Remember, he said, the kingdom's at hand. Watch. They're sitting there right there. They get to hear all of the teaching. They get to see everything. They get to have him explain things to them. They're exposed to the supernatural. I don't know about you, but when I've been exposed to anything that feels vaguely supernatural, I pay attention. Right? You know that, just that knowing God is doing something big here? So when I was thinking about this, I thought, how is this similar to what you're doing? How is this similar to the journey you're on, getting ready for Shine? Do you see any similarities happening here? I want you to just think about that while we move on. Keep that in the back of your mind. For at least Peter, James, and John, and pretty much the rest of the disciples, because of all the things they saw and heard, that should have somehow fueled their mission. You would think that those would be the things that, when they're falling asleep in Gethsemane, they'd be like, oh yeah, last time we fell asleep, we almost missed Elijah and Moses. But that wasn't the case. Not only that, but you talk about missing the point. Listen to this from verses 46 through 48. The disciples began to have an argument about which one of them was likely to be most important. 20 verses later. Not only did they miss the point, it's like they went the complete opposite direction. Hey, cool. We saw Jesus on the mountain, so we're probably the greatest of all the disciples. And they were arguing about it, and Jesus is like, are you kidding me? I mean, that's not what this version says, but it's kind of the point. I mean, they even go so far as to say, hey, Lord, you want us to call down fire on those bad guys over there? The ones that aren't doing it the way you say to? And he's like, are you kidding me? Even foxes have a place to lay their head, but the Son of Man has nowhere. And they're going, okay. But Jesus is saying, guys, you're missing the point again. Why? Why, when they came back from the mountain, couldn't they hang on to what they'd seen? Why didn't it change them? Why didn't it transform them? On top of that, why did they become so petty? I mean, you gotta admit that's pretty petty, right? I'm greater than you because I saw Jesus talk to Moses. No wonder Jesus was confused and disappointed and sad. How did they forget their assignment? He's saying, not too long ago, I just sent you out 2 by 2. I've shown you amazing miracles. I've taught you everything that I came to teach you. I'm getting ready to go give my life for you. Isn't there anything you can cling to right now that would help you stay on course? Why wasn't it enough? Why wasn't hearing the voice of God from heaven enough for them? So as you're getting ready to go to Shine, you're basically going to summer camp. Or winter camp, whichever one you're going to. It's true. You're going to go together. You're all going to bathe. But you're going to go together. And I'm just saying that right now, prophetically. And you are going to have the time of your life. You're going to be together in the same place. You're going to experience the same highs. You're going to touch the supernatural. Because God is there. And even hearing that kind of makes you go, right?
I am.
I'm ready for a spiritual high. And that's a good thing. This is a good part of the process. Because part of the reason you're here is because it's a spiritual journey for you. You've got an assignment somewhere along the line. And now you're moving forward. Okay, so what happens to that assignment when, first, about 4 days in, you crash? Why am I here? Is this even worth it? I spent so much money to get here. My God, why have you forsaken? I know you laugh now, but right? Those of you who've been there, right?
That's real.
It's you're tired. And you're all tired. So you're having a hard time keeping each other going. Some have real spiritual crises while they're there. Some people are really confused as to what God is saying. Some have incredible spiritual breakthroughs. Some people come to a point of decision about being baptized. Yes. They go to the mountain and they touch the supernatural. And then they go home. Back to work. Back to school. Back to doing the dishes and the laundry. After being at the Gaylord for a week.
Yeah, right.
Just back to life. And the high goes away. And it will. What happens to your calling? What happens to that assignment you were given when your spiritual high wears off after Shabbat? What is the purpose of your mountaintop experience in the first place? Why are we amping you up for this mountaintop? Why are we spending months building to the mountain? Why go to the mountain if we just have to come home? What if nobody calls? What if I don't book new jobs? What if I don't make it in the industry? Let's go back to the text. One of the things I want you to remember is Jesus took 3 people with him to the mountain. Jesus didn't go alone. He had other people with him on the journey. So when they came down from the mountain, they had the opportunity to remember well with each other. When you go to the mountain and you come home, remember with the people who went there. Remember with the people who traveled. And this can start at that first crash. Go to the people that are traveling with you and say, "Oh, I'm crashing." So they can help you remember the supernatural. They can help you remember the face of Jesus. They can say, "Remember what it looked like when his face transformed and his garments flashed with light. Remember the thunder from heaven? It's okay, hang on. These people are not your competition. When you come home, don't be tempted to say, well, they're booking jobs, so I'm not. These people are not your competition, they're your community. These are the people God sent to you to journey up the mountain and back with. Hang on to each other. Remember that before Jesus went up the mountain, and after he came down from the mountain, he fed and he healed. It's tempting to make it all about the spiritual. It really is. But for Jesus, the spiritual had to be practical. Don't get so caught up in you that you forget the mission that we're all called to, regardless of where we fit in the industry or not. Don't be so spiritual that you forget the mission of loving your neighbor. When it hurts because you didn't get the callbacks you wanted. When if you got a lot of callbacks, it doesn't come to fruition the way you wanted it to. Remember, it's not about you. You're not doing this for you. You're doing this because you have been assigned to the mission. So go take care of someone. It's easy to stay focused on the spiritual and feel sorry for me. It's a lot harder when I go out and say, wow, who can I serve? The last thing, please remember this. That mountaintop experience, I finally figured out why they went. Listen to the voice of heaven. It's all about Jesus. All of it. This is my son. I have chosen him. Listen to him. It's all about Jesus. When the high fades away, don't be tempted to make it about you. Don't be tempted to get frenetic about making things happen. Hold on to the fuel. Go back to that idea of kindling. This spiritual experience is kindling. You get to choose whether you place the kindling firmly under the logs. I was a Girl Scout, can you tell? And set the flame on fire. And stoke it. And remember with your community. And focus on the mission. And turn your eyes on Jesus. I can pretty well guarantee you, if you choose those things, the flames will explode. You won't need the spiritual high because you'll have that steady, burning ember deep inside you. You'll have the thing that says, you can do this one more day. You'll have the thing that says, it's not about me, it's about Jesus. You'll have that burning, that low voice of thunder rumbling in you. The miracles we witness, the highs we experience, these are just fuel. They're all just fuel. They're glimpses into the kingdom that is at hand. When you go to shine, I mean, all the way through there. Guys, this morning, you have shown me the kingdom. You have loved me well. I needed to see the kingdom at hand. I needed a community to love me today. These little things, these things are the kingdom at hand. You can go out and share these things right now before you ever get to shine and start that burning going. These are the fuel that transforms us and sustains us for the mission. So as we get to shine, as we go through all these weekends, as you get on Facebook and you hear about people's great experiences, let those fuel you. But remember, they're never an end to themselves. They're always simply fuel for the mission. I want you to imagine something with me. And I'm going to close with this. Imagine the whole Seattle Hub goes to shine with the intention of using it for fuel. Goes to shine with the intention of lighting the world on fire. If we all said, this is not about me. I mean, whatever happens, cool. I'm going to get better. I'm going to hone my craft. I'm going to walk into the assignment I've been given. It's not about me, it's about Jesus. And then you start talking to the other people at Shine and you say, what can we do with this? Let's transform the world. Let's use this fuel for the mission. Can we do that?
Yes. Amen.
Pray with me. Holy Spirit, whew, what a vision. What I ask for everyone in this room, for myself included, is that as we're slogging through the day by day things, that you would burn in us. That you would remind us that it's not about us, it's about you. That you would help us take our eyes off of ourselves and put it on the community around us. That we would remember well with each other. And that we would walk forward with the full intention of lighting the world on fire with the love of Jesus. May it be so.